Hi, Terri. It's great to see you today. Thank you for joining me.
Welcome.
I wanted to introduce everyone to Terri Tomoff. Terri is the author of The Focus Fight, which is a fantastic book that she's written about a childhood cancer journey from mayhem to miracles. And she's written it about her fabulous son, Ryan, and his journey through cancer and the impact that it had on their family. So I'm really excited to talk to you and to share with those who are watching your experiences, the lessons that you've learned through this book and through your 24 years of advocacy around childhood cancer, and to really help and guide people who may or may not be in this experience to understand one part of what families go through when their child's diagnosed with cancer and in treatment. Sure. So I'm just going to start with your introduction. So forgive me here. I've got a senior.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
But Terri is a wife, mother, chief caregiver, and hope provider. And for over 24 years, she has advocated for childhood cancer awareness for her son, Ryan. Her son, Ryan, has survived 3 battles against leukemia and 2 adult tongue cancers. And this is her first book. So congratulations on that epic feat of just finishing a book. But in addition to that, she's a master quilter and has her own business doing memorable quilts for people. And that's, I saw that you run your sewing machine at 100 miles per hour. So.
I do. Yes.
So, Terri, first, I want to thank you for writing this book and thank you for having this conversation with us. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to jump right in with our first question.
Sure.
And I want to ask, so why did you decide to write this story? What made you put pen to paper?
I think I started writing this book in my mind when Ryan was first diagnosed, never knowing where it was going to go. Most of it was in my head, of course, but I love cameras and I love photojournaling and so forth. So we started writing things down right away with him. And that was a way we can cope and we can control that. We couldn't control anything else that was going on in that room, and it was a lot, but we can control our writing and what have you. And also, I can control the photographs I was taking. Those really helped me when I was writing the book. So when he battled his 3 cancers, his leukemia cancers, that was ages from 2 to 12, say. So those 10 years were pretty intense. Then he had a little reprieve. And at age 21, he was diagnosed with his first tongue cancer, the squamous cell carcinoma. And at that point, his pediatric oncologist, when we had a appointment with her, she emphatically said to me, "You must write your book now." This was his 4th cancer, with the 5th one following shortly behind it. So she was very emphatic about me getting the word out, and I must start writing. And that was the summer of 2016. He had his first tongue cancer Memorial Day weekend of 2016. The 2nd cancer was in December. And it was in that time period, she says, you must start writing. So that summer is when I first started writing the book. I wrote a little bit more in 2017. That summer also kind of put it away, doing other things in my life. And then I was enabled to, with the lockdown in 2019 and taking a writing class, the Seth Godin's writing and community class at Kimbo. That's when I bolted myself to this chair. I'm sitting right here right now. And I wrote like a mad woman and was able to finish the book and all the goings on and all the things that happened. Not all the things, but most of the things that happened to where I sit probably today to have you interview me. So that's where I've done all that work to get here. Yeah.
One of the themes that I was really struck by in the book is the critical role that you as Ryan's caregiver played in advocating for him throughout all the treatments. When you think of going to multiple different doctors and hospitals and residents and attendings and, specialists, you were the constant presence by his side and taking copious notes, as it's written in the book many times. What is the impact you think that that role had in terms of your ability to advocate for Ryan? What impact did that have on his adherence to treatment plan, on his doctor's commitment to doing everything he could for Ryan? What role did that play?
Well, I think advocacy is a huge role, no matter if your child is 2 or 82, and if you can be there for that person and really speak the truth of what's going on in that room or that child. For us, especially at a 2 years old, I had to advocate for all his needs. He couldn't articulate anything. Well, that advocacy for him when he heard mommy talking to the doctors or the residents or the nurses, then the trust started happening. So there was a huge trust piece that people don't even realize. So anything that was happening to him, I had advocated for him or whatever the case may be. And that way he can get through those tougher moments. And I'm going to give an example. There were a few things that happened, and one of them was a shot that was very painful. And I was not going to lie to him. And I would say to him, Ryan, this is going to be very painful, but I am right here with you. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to hold your head. The nurses are right here. Maybe daddy's in the room too. So he's right here. And we're going to get through this tough moment. That's advocating for his need at that very second that it was going to be a tough moment. I think that exasperated everything else that happened with us in our lives fighting the childhood cancer. I think he believed in us, and he was very thankful that we're advocating for his needs. If it was trying to find a resident to play video games with him, chasing down French fries because the steroid pulse he was on was just overloading his system, and the cravings were so terrible that he had to have those French fries. And then when he got to the room, he didn't want them anymore. So it was just all part of that. But the advocacy and to speak with the doctors correctly and for the nurses and everybody else, and just all his needs, medical and non-medical, it encompasses both. That's why I always suggest for people who are having some health challenges or any kind of challenges to have that extra person with you, a sister, a brother, a husband, wife, whatever, to advocate for that person's needs that really needs it the most at that time. Because we can't all hear what everything is being said to us. So advocacy is a huge role in all our lives. And I just hope that people can see that through the focus fight, that how much advocacy was a huge role played throughout all these years and continues to this day. We're still advocating sometimes. I'm trying to give it to him a little bit more as much as I can. And he's doing really well with it and making his own appointments and so forth. But we're still in the back, in the background, advocating, pushing him along. And we all can be that person for someone.
And it sounds to me that, you got to know a lot about residents, medical students, nurses, doctors,
Yes.
The good, the bad, the ugly,
Yes.
the fantastic.
Yes.
And I know that Dr. Shad even leaned on you to do some trainings and things like that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I had an episode and it was not real favorable. And they're residents and they're interns. And so they're learning. We're in a teaching hospital and something happened. And thankfully, I don't even remember the details, but I remember how angry I got. And instead of taking it out on anyone, I actually went to Dr. Shad and I asked her, I said, is there any way I can do chats from the other side of the bed? I actually even named my own program. And she said, sure. She immediately was able to get the physician's lounge. And before my first chat commenced, I had standing room only. Because she talked to other doctors in the hospital, the PICU doctors, the doctors on the floor that she was working on, and so forth. And I was just talking to these 22 to 26-year-olds on what it means to treat pediatrics, for example, that most of the time they are looking at the parent first and then they'll listen to the doctor. And they're always watching us like a hawk, but it's also for you guys, the residents and the doctors and some nurses that maybe were in there, that how to handle a child or how to deliver news and be empathetic. I think that's the biggest thing I try to explain to them is to be empathetic. And that when you are in pediatrics per se, it's a great career, but you're not only treating that child, a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 16-year-old, you're also dealing with that child's parents and caregivers. It could be grandma, it could be an aunt or uncle, or even a neighbor at times. And so how do you massage all that for the messiest patients in your hospital, the youngest patients of any hospital, and how to, formulate all that as they build their knowledge, not only from the medical piece, but from that other side of the bed, and have that empathy and that kindness that is so well needed in pediatrics. And believe me, these kids had the best teachers of all. some of the
Mhm.
doctors that were at Georgetown at the time when we were, Dr. Schott and Dr. Hauser and many other doctors that were just fabulous in their fields. They were learning from the best. So I said, take heed. So I was thankful to provide that little service.
That's wonderful. And as
Yeah.
you know, as you and Bill have volunteered at many Just Trying It races, and many of the people listening might have heard Bill's voice at the finish
Yeah.
line announcing
Yeah.
their child going through.
Yes.
The financial impact of cancer is huge, and it takes a real toll. You talk in the book about how fortunate you were that Bill was able to continue to work, but that it was a struggle, that you were able to be there full time with Ryan. So can you tell me a little bit about the financial impact on your family, what you saw with other families, and the difference that it can make to have support systems in place?
The support systems in place are wonderful. And that's been only in the last 10, 15 years that has, when we were going through the system, we didn't have that. We had maybe just with leukemia lymphoma society giving us gas cards, but it's changed. That did help. But there were some really frightening moments. I mean, my husband almost lost his job, and I was really having a hard time going, how are we going to do all this? I can't get a job right now. Ryan was in the hospital. The mounting outside costs, just paying for the mortgage, car notes, whatever that case may be. And you're worried about your child, but yet you have these bills hanging in your background and you have to address. So having these outside foundations like Just Trying It, helping people in the most vulnerable moments of their lives is priceless. You can't even the price for the family going through it. The child's not going to realize it. Maybe even a young sibling's not going to realize it, but the parents do. And maybe they're coming from a family that nobody can really help them. So the foundations that are doing this, like Just Trying It, is just unbelievable and such a great program to help the families that need it the most. And there are a lot of them now. With the last couple years, it's really going to be a tough go for some of these families,
Mhm.
and great for that.
Well, and I love the story about the Tomoff family Christmas gift showing up
Yes.
with all the presents for the kids, and then in the bottom of the box was the check
Check.
for the family. And that's
Yes.
just, you didn't have to ask, you didn't have to, it was just there for you. And I
Right.
think that makes such a big difference
That
when your
was a huge.
community can come together and support.
Absolutely. And community is very important. The power of community is what I think I stress throughout the book. And that community could be your neighbors. It could
Mm.
be your family, like our family, which unbeknownst to us, they pooled all the money that they would have spent on Christmas gifts in 1996 and sent that to us, which helped tremendously. It just took a really huge load off of ours for the next year for 1997, which was a tough year actually. So that was really helpful. And we just sparingly, we only used it when we really needed to because we knew we would have some co-pays and some medical expenses that were not going to be paid for. That was kind of that was taken off our shoulders for that year for a year or two. So that was just a huge piece. And if people can learn from that experience and you see somebody that you know or a family member or a kid in the neighborhood, I highly recommend it because that's a way somebody can really help along with the foundations that are out there today. So that's a really good piece. Yes.
The other piece that I was struck by was, you were relatively new to the Crofton community when you came when Ryan was diagnosed, and yet still through Olivia's connections with her
Mhm.
family, you had a lot of people come out and help and support. You mentioned dog walkers, you mentioned, soccer coaches and community pool and on these community supports and how important they were to your life. Can you share some stories of those kinds of impacts of what people did to support you? 'Cause a lot of times people don't know how they're helping or how they can help, and
Right.
it can be the little things that make the most difference.
Right. I love the Mother Teresa quote, do small things with great love.
Hmm.
That means taking your lawnmower a couple houses down to mow somebody's grass that's knee high. Do it. They may be doing something, going through a really hard time in their life that you don't even know about, but those little things. When Ryan went for his bone marrow transplant in 2004, that summer was really tough for us. And we knew we chose Duke University Hospital to do Ryan's transplant, and we had a swim meet that was in his honor. The person that ran that, the kids had to raise money for the different laps they swam. So that money all got to Ryan. They did a Ryan sports camp. They had a dance at one of the local churches for ages 8 to 14 years old kids, and they absolutely had a ball. And they would typically do they would videotape too and send the videotape to Ryan so he saw what was going on. He was a little under the weather on a lot of times, but I think he really appreciated that. I think he appreciates it more now looking back and reading this book too. I think he really appreciates all that, but there is a lot of things that people can do just from a small, and I will tell you this, a tray of brownies or chocolate chip cookies will never go to waste. It's not eaten by the family. They will take it to the nurses and those residents and they'll gobble them up in 5 minutes. Seriously, that's a huge, huge piece that people don't really realize. Anybody can make some brownies and anybody can make some chocolate chip cookies. That will never go to waste.
I love that because you just mentioned all things that kids, high school age kids, elementary school age kids can do to help.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we're all about. It doesn't have to just be about giving money and the parents. There's a lot
That's true. Or
Mhm.
or a tray of lasagna, and like, for example, I know they do the meal trains and stuff, and we had that. Sometimes we couldn't eat all that. It would
Mhm.
just, maybe some of the stuff would go to waste. We try to freeze some stuff, but people were so generous and so lovely that you couldn't say no. And I have the time, I was never really home anyway, so stuff was piling up. But let me tell you that those treats will never go out of style. That will be, yeah, for millennium. So yeah, do that. That's a
I
small thing with great love.
yes.
Mm.
I've had the pleasure of meeting both Ryan and your daughter Olivia, who's Ryan's older sister, and she's also volunteered with JTI and been involved with us. And I love how you speak about her in the book and the resilience that she showed as the older sister of a brother who's going through cancer treatment. And I just, if you want to share some things about what you learned about Olivia through this process and kind of, I think, the impact that it's had on her from your perspective in terms of the person who she is today.
Great. So Olivia is now 29 and she was a little over 4 years old when he was diagnosed. And she says she doesn't remember anything prior to the diagnosis. So she doesn't remember like the good times that we had before Ryan was diagnosed. But she has been the resilient one. She has been the rock for our family. And she just took that role. And I think she grew into it over the years. But by the time she was 12 years old and we were going to Duke University Hospital, we decided to keep her back here in Crofton, Maryland. And we would import support for her, including my family, Bill, my husband, Bill's family, and it had a rotating basis. And apparently, she says, she writes in the book about how I must have sold it. I sold her a bill of goods about making sure that it was going to be okay. And I think it was that she also knew she was loved, and that we only missed 4 or 5 soccer games out of 400 or 500 games that she played over the years. I mean, we just went over the top to try to take care of Ryan and her needs, and she knew that all along. And we kept her in age appropriately. We kept her in the loop, no matter how good or bad, the good, bad, and the ugly, as Maureen said. And I think that was very much appreciated. She's a smart kid, and she just knew that what her role was. And I talk in the book about her being the perfect child, and because some kids, the siblings really get pushed aside. And actually she comes into the book, I mean, when I talk about her specifically in chapter 9, and I say in there a little tongue in cheek, I go, I'm sorry that I introduced her so long, but there was so much that would happen before that. Of course, she was mentioned in those earlier chapters, but when I actually got to her chapter, but she's no more just as important as Ryan was, and she kept our family afloat more times than I can count. She was a smart, ambitious kid. She had her own life, and we wanted her to pursue that own life and her sports and her academics. And she knew that that was her job. I mean, we told her, we sat her down, that's your job, is to do well in school as best you can. And then in your sports or other activities, Girl Scouts and so forth, we did all kinds of things that we could. And I had some good friends that came out of it. They were able to take her under their wing, get her haircut sometimes, and take her for lunch when I was not available for many, many years and many summers that I was in and out, in and out, in and out. And that's what she knew. Like I said, kids they grow up with what they knew. She knew that. But I think that underlying love and support that she knew she always had from us, or she could always make that phone call to us and we will try to make it happen, whatever it was. And then the other end of it is the camps, the sibling camps that she was able to go to. And she met other kids like herself, including her best friend, who she's still best friends with today, met when they were 7. And that, I think, catapulted to her for the rest of her life and where she even stands today. I think that was just a huge piece, that those people, she never had to explain herself to them, as
Mhm.
opposed to like her soccer team or the students that she went to school with. They didn't understand what was happening in her house. But when she went to those camps and she became a counselor, they all understood where she was coming from.
Mhm.
And that was a gift that Bill and I could never even provide. She was able to get that from that type of a camp. So we're really appreciative to those.
I think some of the themes that as our conversation's going through it, unconditional love, building trust, and honesty, so important. And even with kids at any age,
Yeah.
to be honest with them about what's happening in the family.
Good.
Like you said, age appropriate, but I think that's really important. And even with Ryan, with his treatment and understanding,
Absolutely.
not trying to sugarcoat it or gloss over things, or
No.
I think that's really important.
We told the
And,
doctors, please do not sugarcoat anything for us. And because we wanted to just be very transparent before that was a buzzword. We were
mhm.
transparent back in 1996 with everything, because we knew that I just knew I saw some other folks in the some other families trying to sugarcoat some things, or um, just giving pills and so forth. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it how they want us to do it, because we got to get every milligram into this kid, if that's what they think that's going to make him survive or get past this whatever
Mhm.
infection, or we're going to do it. And I think that was really helpful. And then there was no resentment for any of the kids. I don't
Yeah.
think Olivia has resentment, nor Ryan, because we were
Mhm.
always so emphatic with our trust with them, even
When
today.
you're going through it together as a team,
Exactly, the
you
team
know?
approach.
Yeah.
Great approach to do. Team approach
Mhm.
is, yeah, I agree.
Um, so we talked a little bit about your family's resilience, and we haven't actually talked that much about Ryan. So his resilience, his willingness to fight. Talk some more about that, and where that has carried him today, and his fanaticism for barbecuing or his sports teams. But that's a lot to endure for anyone.
That's
And
correct.
and so, it's one perspective to have like the family's persistence, the sister's persistence, but for a child going through that, his fight, and just kind of how did you encourage that? Where do you think that comes from, and how does that manifest itself in who he is today?
Well, I will say, he's 50% Polish. I'm 100% Polish. I swear to God, it's that Polish peasant know-how and just gunning through really tough times. But I noticed his resilience in what Maureen was talking about, that ferocious fight. He was 3 years old when I noticed it initially. I didn't notice it when he was 2, when he was diagnosed, because it was too much happening. But when
Hmm.
he was 3, there was a few things that happened, and I have it in the book, that just gave me pause. Like, I could not believe this kid. He just bore down. He just went down to his soul, his very essence of his being, to fight through infections that the kid in the next room over passed away with.
Hmm.
That is when I was like, whoa, okay, this kid's got something. I don't even know if I could have got through it. And we told him multiple times, we don't know if we would have survived what you went through. What made you overcome some of this stuff? That, like I said, kids were passing away in the other rooms that right next to him with the same exact infection. What made
Yeah.
you survive it? Well, he told me a lot of it was here, even as a 3-year-old. So there are some people in this life that they're going to put mind over matter. And I saw it over and over again. Or is it a miracle? Because we saw
Hmm.
miracles too. And I really believe in that. If you believe in that too, it was miraculous, some of the stuff that this kid was overcoming.
Hmm.
He will also tell you it was video games. He said, even on his, I mean, he had several near death experiences. And if he could hold on to video controller and laying in his bed. And if he can just, even just have those thumbs going, even for a minute, and then put the controller down, he says that is exactly what got him through the toughest moments of his life.
Mm.
And when you have a doctor say that you'll be dead by noon tomorrow if I don't remove the left deltoid muscle, he was 9 years old, turning 10.
Mm.
That was another thing that he had to get through. He didn't burst into tears. I had to hold it together.
Mhm.
And until the doctors left the room and I got Ryan back into his bed, I was able to go back into the bathroom and do my cry to get
Mhm.
release that tension. But this kid was stoic about it. What made him so resilient? I don't know, but I think it's down in deep in his soul. It's recesses, or the brain is that powerful, and he accessed that part of his brain to say,
Mm.
"No, I'm not. I'm going to fight through this." What else could it be, Maureen? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. We don't
No,
know.
look, no, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to witness that in some
It
way.
was.
Like, what a gift to see your child be that strong and that resilient. Thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally, I want to end our conversation with what I am always struck by, because this is how my family deals with everything difficult in our lives, which is your humor, your sense of humor. Sometimes appreciated, sometimes not appreciated in the hospital room. But want to talk about, share with us how important humor is to you and to your family, and kind of what that meant to you in terms of getting you through the stressful times.
Yes, I believe that the humor was really so helpful when the chips were down sometimes, that there was nothing else to do. You're going to cry or you're going to laugh. And there's
Mhm.
times laughter was going to be the win, is going to win the day. And I can tell it was about a story that when Ryan was going to have, when he was 2 years old and 2 months old, he had to have cranial spinal radiation. And the resident, it was like a fourth year resident. He was all businesslike and so forth. And he sits me down in this little office in the radiology department before Ryan got his tattoos placed where the markers. So before he had his first radiation treatment, and he said he's going to be sterile. And so I put my head down on the desk, and I'm either going to cry at that juncture, or am I going to laugh? And I lifted my head up and I said, "So that means he'll be a stud muffin in college, right?" And this guy looked at me. He couldn't. He was blank. He was just. I don't think he believed what I said, but it put a smile on my face. And at those harrowing moments in life, I just had to make a little bit of humor out of that, because that was one thing after another already. And now we were going down another rabbit hole of, I don't know if this kid's going to make it. So I had to just make a funny. So,
Mhm.
and I think I sprinkled that throughout the book, because there were funny moments. There were many funny moments that happened. Even on trying days, we had funny moments,
Mhm.
even to the point where I was so mad at some of these residents and everything. And I would just say, you know what? I'm paying for pizza tonight, because I was so mad at something that happened or whatever, but I'm going to make up to it and we're going to have pizza, and you don't have to share it with me, but I'm going to buy it, and it's going to be in the physician's lounge, whatever. You guys go and enjoy. So I would just make up, for that. So I
That's
just
great.
continue on with that. But I do want me to mention the thing about Bill's, about the reflection that he had?
Yeah, yeah. I would love for
We'll
you to close with
wrap it
that. I
up.
know your
Yeah,
husband Bill wrote a reflection, so if you could close
right.
with that, that would be really beautiful. Thank you.
Sure. I dropped the paperback book on March 25th. So it's only been out about 5, 6 weeks now. And in the last week or so, Bill wrote a little bit of a reflection about what has come through in the last 3 or 4 weeks. But his fourth thing is what I'm going to read to everyone today. And I think it really sums up about not only me writing the focus fight about Ryan, but others too. And here's what he says. So this is from Bill. Beyond Ryan, we also came to realize that too many children and families fight the horrific war of childhood cancer, and the heroic efforts are rarely known outside their family, their treatment specialists, and support organizations like Just Trying It. These children have dreams like everyone else, and they do deserve attention and affirmation that they are also a unique gift to the world. Unfortunately, most of these children fight in anonymity, and their blessing to the world is known by far too many, too, I mean, far by, excuse me, gift to the world, known by too few people, is what I want to say. My gift to Ryan and the world is through telling Ryan's story. It is a way to honor everyone chosen to face on the war of childhood cancer. So I'd like to end with that. And I think it sums up that there's everyone has a story to tell. And if I can do that, and
Absolutely.
if I can help one person or one family, then my book will be a success. And you know what? I think I found one person or one family in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And
That's
that
great.
I'm truly blessed. Thank
And
you,
I
Maureen.
think it will be many more than that. I
I
do believe that.
hope so.
The book is The Focused Fight by Terri Tomoff, and it can be purchased on Amazon. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us
Thank
today,
you.
Terri. And
Thank you,
we're
Maureen.
hopeful to spread the good word
Yes, I
of all that your
appreciate that.
family learned, and hopefully we can touch some more families' lives through this.
Absolutely. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
All right.